Good morning, and welcome to the chaos, which could not be a more fitting catchphrase for how this video is currently going. So, I have already finished all of the mock-ups that you'll see in this video, and already recorded all of the dialogue and all of these little sit-down sections, but they had no audio thanks to this gorgeous little thing not recording during the videos. So, we're here again. We're gonna redo this so y'all can hear. I'm gonna try and simulate each morning at 10:30 at night of what each morning was like. But I'm not going to go through the hassle of changing clothes or anything else, so it's going to be a dramatic walk-in. Alright, so I think our first step is we have to cut out the pattern. Well, we have to tape the pattern pieces together and then cut them out, which I will save you from having to see that because that is going to be a very long period of time. And after that, we can start on the mock-up, but let's get started. Alright, so the first thing that I'm doing here is taking my front panel and pinning it on the fold of the fabric so that when I cut it out, it's one solid piece versus being two, which I end up changing in the end anyway, but that's how we're going to do it for the entirety of these first two mock-ups. So, after we get all of that pinned together, we go ahead and just pin the rest of the pattern pieces on and then just cut them out. Like, nothing really fancy about any of it, so. It was at this moment that I realized how insanely big that sleeve ruffle is, and I got very, very excited. And then I'm marking with a fabric pencil where the darts go, and I'm just tracing it out with my ruler so I have a good place to pin because I've not really done darts before. And then to make sure that it's exactly the same on the other side, I run a pin through at the point and then mark it, and then I mark each side from the other one and then just trace them all together to make that triangle. And then we're just going to go ahead and pin those in place and call it good. I went ahead and decided to just hand stitch this in place instead of pulling out my machine because it's a kind of a weird angle, and also it's so small that I figured I could just sit back, get comfy, watch some YouTube, and sew for all of like 10 minutes. And finally, I just pinned and stitched the back panels together to make them one solid piece. finished the first mock-up last night. A bit of a dunce. And didn't necessarily think that the measurements being just a little bit off, like I don't know, 0.2 inches, not even, off would be all that much of an issue, because I thought I got the biggest size. It would have been way big in the waist anyway, and I wanted to be able to shape it down, so I didn't think it'd be a huge deal to lose, like less than an inch. But it didn't end up being half an inch, because it's 0.2 inches per page, and it was 35 pages. And that sits a little bit differently. Also, I didn't measure the pattern beforehand, which was my bad. And my boyfriend even was like, what? Because I'm stupid and I trusted the pattern, and I trusted the pattern sizing. And I know you don't do that, but I couldn't be bothered to measure it with the ruler I used to measure the test. Or my sewing ruler. My fabric measuring tape that was 2 inches away from me. I didn't think about it. So, there were a lot of good things that actually came out of that mock-up, besides the fact of needing to bring the size up. We did get to test the collar, and I think you're able to see that in this lovely picture of me putting it on. And the collar looks really nice. A little bit of zhuzhing to kind of like complete that Peter Pan collar look that I was going for, so not a huge deal there. I love how giant those sleeves are. They're just a tad bit tight here, so I think loosening them a little bit, I think I ended up bringing it out like 2 inches? One at the top here, and then one here for the second mock-up. And that helped a lot, a little bit more, probably. That's what I'm going to do for the final. We're going to go ahead and make a second mock-up that hopefully fits. I'm going to add a giant, probably 4 to 5 inch panel down the center of each of the pattern pieces and go from there. I know that's going to make it really like baggy up here, where it probably doesn't need to be super baggy, but I'd rather have all of the extra everywhere else and be able to tuck it in, reshape the pattern as we go, and go from there. So, let's do it. So what I ended up doing to fix the pattern is just finding the center point in the pattern, cutting it, and then putting about a 5-inch hole in the center, and then taping it all down with more pieces of paper. And then I added a piece of paper's worth of length to the bottom, so I guess that is 11 inches. And I did that for both the front panel and the back panel. And then what I'm doing now is going through and just extending those darts. Since I did make the bodice bigger, I needed to make the darts bigger as well so that they would go to the entirety of the bodice. For both the collar pieces and the sleeve, I think I added 2 inches to each of them, just to even out what I did to both the front and the back panels. And I did this by finding the center point in each of them and drawing a line and cutting it. For the sleeve in particular, I actually only added 1 inch to both of these areas, so that I would have 1 inch on the top and 1 inch added on the bottom when I added the paper in between, so that I could make sure that it was evenly distributed. And finally what I did is I kind of guesstimated on the amount of It's tough to take off of the sleeve, and I think I went with 2 centimeters and just cut that out around it, and it ended up being perfect. And then I cut it, redrew the seam allowance on it, and it was good to go. Alright, second mock-up, much better. I think I definitely still want to bring it out a couple more inches in the waist to kind of give it more of a flowy kind of look to it. Very tight everywhere does not really look great on my body type, but a nice, I don't know really if it's an A cut, kind of 50s style-ish. If I had any like actual idea what that means. Something more like this. That's kind of the shape we're going for here. And so what we're gonna do now is bring in the bust, probably just about to where we added that in, and bring out the waist. Going for the waistline being just about what it is at 35 inches. Because the waist fits perfectly. The top, way too baggy. The waist, way too tight. About the exact opposite of what I ever want in a garment. So, that's not really the pattern's fault though. I think that is just how it's designed. It's meant to fit really loose. But when there's like a 10 to 15 inch difference between your waist and your hips at the widest point, it doesn't really, the whole like slightly curved box look to make a nice loose comfy dress doesn't exist. It's the same problem I run into with skirts where the front will fit at a perfect length and the back will be way too short. So we're gonna go ahead and do that. And I think for this one, I'm not gonna worry about making the sleeves because the sleeves on these fit really well. I'm gonna probably take out the shoulder out a little bit too, but then bring the neckline up and like tighter. I think that'll help with the sleeve falling so far down. I think if we just tighten that neckline back up, which will happen when we bring in the chest area, I think it'll look much better that way. I'm not going to worry about sewing the gussets into this like I've been doing, where I sew them first. Because the gussets land so high, I feel like they were going to aim for shaping around the chesticles and just kind of failed at that immensely. For me anyway, mine sit, quite low. I have a very broad chest and they are very far down. So I think I'm going to just wait until I have the actual front sewn, and then I will kind of feel out where the gussets go to kind of have them shape more nicely, because I'd like a nice emphasized look. I feel like if we shape the top a little bit better, it makes the rest of the dress look a little more flattering too. I did say we were going to spread the skirts out. What we're going to go ahead and do for that, like work a gusset in. Like I don't want it to be a separate piece because I feel like that'd look a little weird. I want it to just be, well, it ends up being 4 panels, but I want it to just be the main seams. So I think I'm just going to work the gusset in on the side. So just a large triangle. So we're looking in the range of about 100 inches around, because I'm really hoping to get that nice flowy, spinny, maybe swing dancey look out of it. Vintage, but make it goth. But yeah, we're gonna go ahead and do that. That works pretty well from what I've seen. I'm just gonna start the gusset right where the tightest part is, right at my waistline, and then just whoosh out from there in a triangle. And it's gonna look a little asymmetrical, very pointy, but on the final one, I can just go around and trim that excess off while I am shaping the rest of it, because I'm hoping that I can actually finally own a dress that is the same length on the front that it is on the back. So I'm gonna go ahead and shape that on the actual fabric. What I did for this point is I measured down 11 inches to where my waistline is and marked out a triangle where the center of the triangle, the tip, was at that 11-inch down mark, and then I took the edges up to the top of where the new pattern was, so that when I cut it out, I could just tilt them together and it would take in the top, leave the waist where it is, and take out the hips. And finally, to make the gores, I just took 4 pieces of paper and made them into a giant rectangle, and then I just cut the center of those papers and made a big triangle gore that I was able to put on each side of the pattern. And I did this again for the back panel, and I did the same thing, I just only did 1/2 versus doing 1 for each side that I did on the front. So I do love how this turned out. I am going to also bring the waistline up just a little bit because it's a little lower than my natural waist, and bring it in just a nip because it's a little bit loose, but this is just about what I was going for, so that is awesome. Next day, right, it turned out fantastic. I love how the neckline sits. It sits very snug, the perfect like height, everything. I think the shoulders are actually sitting in a perfect spot to add the sleeves when we do the final. The only thing is putting in those gussets. I think I'm just gonna wait until I have the front cut out of the actual fabric. I also decided at this point that I wanted to just go ahead and cut that front panel into 2, and well, I don't think I actually cut it. Did I cut it? I might have cut it. I'm gonna do it in 2, so instead of doing it on the fold like I have been doing, I'm just gonna go ahead and cut it into 2 separate pieces and sew them together. I'm gonna give myself a little bit of extra seam allowance there, but I feel like it would just look a little bit better and help with the shaping if I could do it, you know, individually. But other than that, it is fantastic. I love the fit, the length, perfect, very pointy at the moment, just like I'd figured it would be, but that's fine. That's totally fine. That's a fix that can just be done on the main. It doesn't really have to be done on these mock-ups. I think that does it for now. I don't think I can actually put a final, like the final project in this one because I have a whole bunch of lace and ruffles and pretty buttons and all kinds of really, really cute stuff to put onto the final one that I really want to be able to show you guys, but this video took already a week's worth of drafting up a custom pattern for it, and I feel like it would just be a little too long to try and include all of that because, oh boy, did it take a long time to do all of that. So I think we're gonna do a part 2, and I hate doing part 2s, but it's for the actual detailing, and this part's just kind of the making it fit on my weird shaped body, which is never really fun, but at least in the end you get a really nice custom fitted garment that you wouldn't get normally. So I think that we will call this good. I think I'll see you guys next week with the final product. So stay weird. Bye.